Hi guys, just an update on the Yabo. The closing date will be the 14th of July. I'm sorry I forgot that. If I've forgotten anything else, let me know and we'll have 100 updates every time I remember. I understand that you guys are having some kind of celebration this weekend and on the 4th. Tim tells me it's because of Independence Day. But I can't possibly believe that you gained independence from us. I thought we'd only loaned you a time apart. It wasn't until I talked to Her Majesty that she said, yes, unfortunately, you'd won some kind of war. I don't know whether we gave it to you as a gift or we weren't trying, but to be serious, have a great time, guys. Have a wonderful weekend and be with your families and enjoy the time that you have together. It's a good focus is some of the holidays that you have. Your Veterans Day, your Independence Day focuses very much on not only family but nation and all the other things you do. And you've got a lot of freedom to hold on to. Unfortunately, in this country, we've lost all our freedom, really. And apparently nobody cares enough to take to the streets or vote in people who are prepared to work at gaining back some of the things we've lost. Anyway, enough politics. It's a lovely day here in England, in Newcastle, where I live. It's been very wet and cold just recently, so cold that we'd even thought of putting the heating on again. I'm smoking my Peterson pipe that I got from Scotland in a junk shop. And I've got to say, it's the best pipe that I've ever smoked. You can see it just didn't go out. It's still burning. I can talk and I can then just puff on it and it's still there. In it, I've got Presbyterian mix. It's one I particularly like and I'm nearly out of it except for one tin I've got in storage, hoping to age it a bit. I'm really wonder about aging stuff at my age. I suppose Tim will benefit from it, but maybe I won't. I've been looking really for some other tobaccos to try because I want to get as many as I can that I like, because things are constantly changing. And it's never ever easy when you suddenly find a tobacco you like and that you get used to and some idiot goes and stops it, especially the way things are at the moment. We still belong to the European market. And I thought about getting some tobacco from one of the German shops, because they have some of the tobaccos that you guys have. Unfortunately, they can't sell it within the European market. There's a ban on them selling it to any other member of the European market. And apparently it's the same in a lot of shops, which, when you think about it, is a bit stupid. But anyway, I wondered what story I could tell you today, what things might be interesting. And I thought I'd think a little bit about childhood and what it felt like growing up in the country, far away from the village where I went to school and out on the marshes, especially because one or two guys have been talking about how their childhood affected them. And I want to share with you some of the things that affected me in my childhood and in my life. I want to do that because I want to also share with you something else. But first of all, childhood. We were miles away from anywhere. My mum and my dad was a farm worker, tractor driver, cowman. So he'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and looking after the cows, and then he'd spend the rest of the day either working in the fields or on the farm. And Mum worked in the fields when women were wanted, potato picking time and that kind of thing. And she worked at the big house when they weren't wanted. I spent a lot of times wandering around on the marshes, spending time alone, really enjoying being alone. It was one of the things that I loved. And one day on the marshes I came across the magic man. He was cleaning out the dikes with a digger, and he was there all summer. And he showed me magic tricks, and when he was having his mid-morning or mid-afternoon drink or his meal, we'd just sit and talk. And I was only about 9, but he treated me as if I was something special. We just sat, we talked about what was around us, the life and that. And then one day I went down on the marshes and he'd finished his job and he'd gone. But life at home was not good. My father was a very violent man. He used to use his army belt with its big brass belt, sort of where he put the thing through and the belt buckle. And he'd beat me with that by swinging it quite hard, and it really did hurt. But what he used to do, when he went to bed, he'd take his belt off. No matter what time it was, I'd be asleep, and he'd bang the belt buckle on the door, on my bedroom door, and hang his belt on the back of my door, and then point to me and point to the belt. And in the morning, 5 o'clock or before, he'd take it off, bang the belt on the door, and he's just putting it on, point to it and point to me. In other words, step out of line and you get this. My mother was mentally and physically and sexually abusive. I'm not going into details about that. I grew up in fear and trembling of both of them. And to be honest, it wasn't until my dad was so ill that we had a row one day. But, I still lived in fear of him and of my mother, even though I was in my 30s, 40s. And that left me really struggling, mentally ill, depression, and all the things that go with that. It was really hard to bear. I suffered a really big bout of depression when I found out that my mother had married my father after she'd had me, and in fact I was adopted. No idea who my father was. I think he was an American guy who used to know my mother and work with her. But I don't know that. He could have been the band of the Grenadier Guards for all I know. And that affected me. But gradually, you know, I'd married early. I'd married Carolyn, and I think we've both learned to live life. We lost a child, our first child, needed an operation, and the operation killed her. And then when they did the post-mortem, they found that she hadn't really needed that operation. I did go to a psychiatrist, and he was a great guy, and sort of took me apart and put me together. But it wasn't until about 2 or 3 years ago that I began to come through it. And the first aid to that was telling God to clear off. You know, I just found it very difficult at that time to believe in God. You know, if God's all powerful, then he's evil because of the things that he allows. And if he's, you know, if he's not all powerful, then, you know, you sort of question what's it all about. But once I'd done that and said, right, I'm not going to church again, all the guilt went. And I began to suddenly feel more assured of myself, more free of things around me. And that sort of carried on. I joined a writing group, and people liked my writing, and gradually built me up in that way of saying, you know, you're okay, you can write. We like your writing, your poems, your stories are good. I've ended up running 2 writing groups now that I was a member of, and I'm enjoying it. Then I sort of joined the tobacco group, and putting up the videos has helped a lot. It's helped a lot because it's given me confidence. I used to have trouble ringing people up, of speaking to them, even if they were friends. I really would tremble at doing it. But just recently I've been all right, ring people up, great. And that again is because of the group, because of the things that we do on the group, and because of what I call the brotherhood of the pipe. You know, it's not necessarily that we're very close physically, or even sometimes mentally, but the responses that we give each other, I think, are important. They can grow us in confidence. They can help us when we're down, when we're really struggling. And some of you guys will know what it's like to really struggle. Maybe you don't share it, but if the figures are right, a lot of us have had mental illness and have been in hospital with it. Now that sounds all depressing, you know, and terrible. So I want to tell you a story about when I was in the mental hospital. The ward was locked, and me and a friend decided that we were going to escape, and we just wondered how to do it. And in the end, we decided that the best thing would be to put the torch on and climb up the light beam and get out through the window. Because, I mean, we weren't mad, you know, of course we weren't. But we thought if we climbed up the light beam, we could get out of the window. And we'd planned this, we'd planned the night. But in the end, I wouldn't go. And he said, well, why not? I said, because you'll turn the bloody lights off. Happy 4th of July, folks.